Black pilot told to wait outside by airline staff. Minutes later, she shuts the entire company down. Ava Mitchell had always been told she flew like she was born with wings. But on that fateful December morning at Horizon Airlines headquarters, those wings were clipped by 7 words that would change everything. "Captain Mitchell, we need you to wait outside." She never imagined those words would ignite a chain reaction that would bring one of America's oldest airlines crashing to the ground. Not from the sky, but from the weight of its own corruption. The morning fog clung to the tarmac of O'Hare International Airport as Ava navigated her way through the sprawling terminal complex. At 37, she carried herself with the quiet confidence that came from logging over 15,000 flight hours across every continent except Antarctica. Her uniform was impeccable, for gold stripes on each sleeve catching the fluorescent lights as she pulled her pilot's case behind her. Ava checked her watch. 5:17 a.m. The briefing for Flight HA-27 to San Francisco was scheduled for 5:30, giving her just enough time to grab coffee from the crew lounge before meeting her co-pilot. The familiar pre-flight ritual usually calmed her nerves, but today felt different. After months of applying, interviewing, and testing, today marked her first day as senior captain at Horizon Airlines, one of the country's most prestigious carriers. The crew lounge door swung open as Ava approached, releasing the aroma of freshly brewed coffee and the low murmur of early morning conversations. Inside, pilots and flight attendants huddled around tables, reviewing flight plans or scrolling through their phones. Ava made her way to the coffee station, aware of the subtle shift in the room, the momentary pause in conversations, the curious glances. She'd grown accustomed to being a novelty. According to the most recent industry statistics, less than 1% of commercial airline pilots were black women. "You must be Captain Mitchell," a voice said from behind. Ava turned to find a man in his 50s with salt and pepper hair and the same 4 gold stripes on his uniform. "Captain Robert Whitmore," he said, extending his hand. "Welcome to Horizon." "Thank you, sir," Ava replied, shaking his hand firmly. "It's an honor to join the team." "Robert, please," he corrected with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "I'll be your check captain for the next few weeks. I assume you've reviewed the flight path for today." "Yes, sir. I've memorized Horizon's SFO approach procedures and studied the weather patterns. We're expecting some turbulence over the Rockies, but nothing unusual for this time of year." Robert nodded, his expression unreadable. "Good. The crew is waiting in briefing room C. I'll meet you there in 5. As he walked away, Ava felt a knot forming in her stomach. Throughout her career, she'd learned to read people quickly, a necessary skill when your life depended on clear communication with strangers in a cockpit. Something about Robert's demeanor set off warning bells. She'd encountered countless men like him, men who smiled while silently calculating all the ways she might fail. Ava took a deep breath and poured her coffee, adding a splash of cream. As she stirred, she caught sight of her reflection in the metallic surface of the coffee machine. Her father's words echoed in her mind. "You'll have to be twice as good to get half as far." She had lived by those words, graduating at the top of her class at the Air Force Academy, serving 8 years as a military transport pilot, including 3 tours in Afghanistan, before transitioning to commercial aviation. The briefing room buzzed with activity when Ava entered. 6 flight attendants and her co-pilot, First Officer Jacob Chun, were already seated around the table. Jacob, a young Asian-American pilot with just under 5 years of commercial experience, stood as she entered. "Captain Mitchell," he said with a genuine smile. "I've heard great things. Looking forward to flying with you." Before Ava could respond, Executive Operations Director Thomas Barrett entered the room, followed by Robert. Thomas, a tall man with a perpetual frown etched into his face, cleared his throat. "There's been a change of plans," he announced, deliberately avoiding Ava's gaze. "Captain Whitmore will be taking command of Flight 207 today. Captain Mitchell, we need you to wait outside while we reassign you." The room fell silent. Ava felt all eyes on her as heat crept up her neck. "May I ask why?" she said, struggling to keep her voice even. I was scheduled for this flight weeks ago. Thomas glanced at Robert before responding. It's a matter of experience. San Francisco is a challenging approach, and given your unfamiliarity with our protocols. With all due respect, Ava interrupted, I've flown in a SFO 73 times over the past decade, including during severe weather conditions. My qualifications were thoroughly reviewed during the hiring process. Captain Mitchell, Thomas said, his tone hardening, this isn't up for discussion. Please wait outside for a moment. Ava considered arguing further, but decided against it. This wasn't a hill to die on. Not yet, anyway. With as much dignity as she could muster, she nodded, set down her flight documents, and walked out. The hallway felt colder than it had moments before. Ava leaned against the wall, her mind racing. In her 20 years of flying, she'd faced discrimination in countless forms, from passengers requesting a different pilot upon seeing her to colleagues making snide comments about affirmative action. But this felt different, more calculated, more deliberate. 10 minutes passed before the door opened again. Instead of Thomas or Robert, it was Jacob who emerged, looking uncomfortable. Sorry about that, Captain, he said, keeping his voice low. For what it's worth, I think it's nonsense. What did they say after I left? Ava asked. Jacob hesitated. They claimed it was standard procedure for new captains, but he trailed off, glancing down the hallway. Look, I've been here 3 years. I've seen 4 new captains start. None of them got pulled from their first flight. A familiar heaviness settled in Ava's chest. Thanks for telling me. There's more, Jacob said, leaning closer. I've been assigned as Whitmore's co-pilot, but they want you to shadow Flight 422 to Seattle. It's a short hop. They're saying it's to acclimate you to company procedures. He made air quotes with his fingers. Ava nodded slowly. And who's captaining that flight? Harold Wilson. The name struck like a hammer blow. Harold Wilson, Horizon's most senior captain and, according to industry gossip, a man who had vocally opposed diversifying the pilot ranks. Ava had never met him, but his reputation preceded him. I see, she said quietly. Captain, Jacob corrected himself. If you want to file a complaint, I'll back you up. Ava considered the offer. A complaint on her first day would brand her as difficult, regardless of the merits. She'd spent her career navigating these treacherous waters, knowing when to speak up and when to bide her time. Let me handle Flight 422 first, she decided. But I appreciate the offer, Jacob. Not everyone would stick their neck out like that. He nodded, understanding the unspoken calculation. Good luck with Wilson. He can be old-fashioned. Ava almost laughed at the euphemism. I've dealt with old-fashioned before.